Hi, everyone. This is Mark Salisbury. We're going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to share with you today about best practices around mobile in the mobile space, where mobile consumers have gone. Join with me today is Christina Trampota. I'm really excited to have you with us, Christina. For a quick introduction here, Christina has been the mobile marketing professor at San Francisco State University now for 4 years. And if you look around, you'll see her in a lot of places. Her experience ranges from big companies to smaller startups. She has done a lot of consulting. Across 15 years, she's seen it all from the carrier side, hardware, software, and more. So she's a wealth of knowledge in all things mobile. Delighted to have you with us today, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'll do a quick introduction for myself. My name is Mark Salisbury. My background is that I've also been around mobile for some time. Got into that back in 2001 with Verizon Wireless and spent about 9 years there. In the area of customer experience in general, but also getting into device and software testing, and it certainly lines up with my passion. After Verizon, started a mobile market research company, sold that, and now I'm here with QuestionPro, heading up customer experience, including a lot of things that are touching the mobile consumer. So Christina and I are going to talk about that today, what bigger trends are going on. So this is the hashtag for today. If you're on Twitter, on social media, if you'd like to go ahead and do any post out to social media, that would be great. Use the mobile intelligence hashtag. And then one other quick reminder, we're going to have a time for questions and answers at the end of this webinar. So throughout the webinar, in your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar interface, if you go ahead and put your questions in there, as they come up, we'll be able to field some of those questions and respond to you at the end of the webinar. Okay. So Christina, would you like to cover our agenda for the call today?
Sure, thank you. So today we're going to go through a variety of topics, and starting off just initially, how do you actually go mobile? And starting from a higher level in mobile messaging to the surveys, content, what do you address in mobile web? How might you go into a mobile app from development to production and promoting it, as well as mobile data and what matters at the end?
That's great. So pretty much we're getting into everything mobile today. Wonderful. Okay. Well, let's start out someplace fun here. I'll go ahead and go to this next slide. What does that remind you of there, Christina? We have that phone over there on the left-hand side. That takes us back to the 1980s. What does that remind you of?
Yes, actually it reminds me of my days in Motorola, and I was managing a recycling program, and I used to see these devices coming in as late as 2004, 2005, actually, where it was still part of someone's home, and they were just now finally handing it off and deciding to turn it into recycling material.
Isn't that crazy? And this was introduced, this is the Dynatac for everyone. This was introduced back in 1984. It retailed for just under $4,000, and just to put that in perspective, that's about $10,000 in today's money. Okay, so huge investment to be able to go mobile back in 1984. And this phone here had a talk time of about 30 minutes and required a 10-hour charge. Contrast that with the devices of today. The other interesting thing that I saw here is that this was manufactured for 10 years. When we think about where we are today, these devices are obsolete after months, not years. So the thought of a device being manufactured for 10 years today, you can't even imagine that. So what we're seeing is this velocity of adoption in mobile, and it's unlike anything else, any other kind of technology really that we've seen. And over on the right-hand side, this is an interesting graph here. It shows the years that it takes to get to 25% adoption. Now, this is specific to the United States, this one here. So you can see electricity down there, 46 years, just to get to 25% of the adoption across the population. Ladder that up, look at the PC. You've got that at about 16 years there. Even mobile phones, over 10 years, 12, 13 years there. But smartphones, the velocity of adoption has been unprecedented, 4 to 5 years there to get to 25% adoption. What is your take on that, Christina?
Well, I think as we've come into newer technologies in the mobile space, it's evolving so quickly. And I think just the efficiencies and how it's become part of our everyday lives has really made that possible, as well as the cost point, right? The price point of mobile has continued to decline, especially when we look at that on a global basis, therefore making it available to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, what we're seeing is that brands, they're used to that slow transition, right? The technologies are coming out, they have time to get used to it. But with mobile, things have moved so fast that consumers are now on mobile doing things that they used to do in other areas. I know you're going to speak to this in one of the coming slides. But consumers have moved and brands have been slow to move. And so that is the big opportunity that we're going to share today. We're going to talk about what's happened and then practical steps to implement a strategy to take advantage of that and meet the consumer where they are. So I'll go ahead and transition to this next slide.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. So as you see on this slide, this is actually from Mary Meeker's recent reports that went out just less than a month ago or so. It's actually showing how mobile is part of our everyday lives, from the fact we spend more time with our mobile devices actually than anyone else in our personal life. When you wake up, so when you go to sleep, there are now more mobile devices in existence out there than humans on the planet since 2014. I bet that surprised a few of you. Well, smartphone penetration continues to increase around the world, clearly. I think many of us can take a moment and pause and think, when you saw your first smartphone, and looking at all of this. And on this media slide here, it actually is showing the variety of media types that are out there today and comparing the time spent there and the variety of channels. You can see print and TV and where those evolve. And while those are decreasing, radio and internet are steady, and mobile is where the growth clearly is. It presents the opportunity in the mobile channel, which has the largest gap when you compare that time the consumers are spending there versus the ad spend in that type of channel. So that's what Mark was leading into earlier, speaking to the fact that, you know, how fast some things actually evolve and where our point to accelerate might be. And this points to the finding that advertisers are actually still spending too much of their time in traditional channels, such as radio and television, for example, and they need to increase the prioritization and move their preferences more to where the consumers are today, which is mobile. And one last point on this is specifically how Mary Meeker actually highlighted the fact that mobile ads have grown 66% in this time frame, where a desktop only grew by 5%. So imagine that kind of growth comparison in 1 year. And in the US market, which is what this slide is actually highlighting, it's $22 billion is what she's predicting this to grow to. So it shows that huge opportunity that's out there.
Yeah, that's great, Christina. The big contrast here for me is look at print, this old world medium, if you will, that's been around for centuries, and there, you still see so much money being spent in print, even though the time spent there has gone down. So the eyeballs have gone somewhere else as far as what consumers are looking at. Yet you still see brands stuck in that. It's because they've able to measure it. Now, that's one of the things that you and I have talked about, which is they've been doing this for years and they feel like they're stuck to a certain measurement. Now these eyes have moved over to mobile. People are spending so much time there. So, gosh, that gap. So let's talk about what that looks like, because we're seeing the same thing in the mobile market research space, which is that brands have been slow to get on board. And this is what we're hoping that the audience today will walk away with is, here's the opportunity. Let me go back to my organization and let's see how we can take advantage of this opportunity right here.
Right. Thank you. And this next slide actually is a great connection because it shows what you need to consider when you're looking at going into this mobile channel specifically. So when you want to move forward with this new channel of mobile, consider this a quick scope scale outlook for you to look and consider, are you really ready to bring mobile into your business? Starting at the top from design, development, management, maintenance, and marketing, of course. Is it a completely new product or service for your business? Or is it simply a new channel or method of communication for you? So think about this, and hopefully it'll help you consider it from both a budget perspective, the team resources, technology investment you would need to make, and of course time. All of these things would cost you some time in your business. So let's think of mobile here as also there's companies that have gone mobile only, right? Mobile first is still a valid business model, but some companies have gone and diversified initially to go beyond a mobile app, from pop-up stores to all sorts of options. that leads us into the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And this actually shows you where today's connected consumers are actually looking to communicate with your business or brand via mobile. So based on a Comscore report in late 2015, 91% of online time on desktops and mobile is actually spent in messaging apps. So I thought we'd highlight here on the left side of this slide here, there's popular preferences we've seen around the globe in the past year. And they range in a variety of response options, from response time, user experience, what they might actually be sharing and learning in this channel. So think about that. Look at those metrics there from Business Intelligence. The identification used in these channels can sometimes be as simple as your name and mobile number, or they could go even more creative with something like emoticons, avatars, where you have literally created your own identity out there. But clearly, the combined user base of the top 4 chat apps is now larger than the combined user base of the top 4 social networks. I'm going to take a pause there. Think about that. So that's referring to WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook Messenger, and Viber, for those who might be curious as to those top apps. So one thing is for sure here, it's a business priority. And timely response and attention to your mobile consumers out there that are present today, real time, is what makes it impactful and effective for everyone. You can have all sorts of creativity, artificial intelligence. You know, we're starting to see things out there about bots and messaging through that, communicating there. What really matters is that the response is complete. You've actually answered it. And while these messaging apps are quite popular, studies have actually shown that consumers, especially our younger generation, such as millennials, they actually have a strong preference of using SMS over apps out there. That actually points us to the right side of this slide and the data that we're going to speak to there. Texting, as some know in some markets as SMS, is the most widely used and frequently used app on smartphones for some time now. Believe it or not, that's true. With 97% of Americans use it at least once per day, according to Pew Internet Research. On a global basis, if we take a step back and look at this even broader, there's almost 16 million of these sent every minute. Imagine that. I think we can actually picture that pretty well. Thinking of the population and all the number of mobile devices out there. We have more devices than people. So clearly, it's a tried and true established channel of SMS. It can shine and show through the others in this situation. This specific figures here on the right side come from Open Market in something at the end of 2015, and it actually presents the growing markets and the growth in the last 12 months. Look at those metrics, and quite a diversity of the markets that are highlighted there. So in summary, actually, to wrap up mobile messaging and SMS, you know, the business messaging you're trying to provide here, from initial advertising or exposure to the call to action, you know, this should be a common communication channel that you're using, such as SMS. You know, this can handle everything from two-factor authentication, delivery alerts, reminders on an appointment, to something from customer service or giving you validation or fraud alerts, right, depending on your industry. But some fast facts to wrap this up with. Why SMS is actually a winner here? Well, they have a high open rate. Text messages have a 98% open rate, while email has only 20%. And then the response rate, right? Text messaging has 45% response rate, while email is only 6%. And last but not least, I think this one is a one that should stick with everyone, and that is text messages are actually read in an average of under 5 seconds, because it's something that's so natural to our behavior with mobile being part of our lives now, right? You get that message, you tend to click on it and see it and decide if you're going to respond or act upon that notification. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mark to start this from a research angle.
Yeah, that's great. I want to make a couple of comments here. You know, one thing that I hear over and over is we know we need to be on social media. We have money allocated to social media. And again, I think that is lagging, right? It's because of this right here that you see with the social media has been in the front for so long. I'm glad that you pointed this out, because there's a clear opportunity here, which is the gap. You've got so many people out there on messaging, and how can you integrate that into your mobile strategy? And then over here on the right-hand side, I'm not surprised to see Saudi Arabia on the top here, as you know, the Middle East in general is an up-and-coming place as far as SMS and businesses' ability to communicate with their customers via SMS. One example of that is that we're working now with a bank in Saudi that's leveraging SMS as a way to measure customer experience after transactions. Okay, and you talked about that recency of the experience. They want to get very close to the moment of truth. So, Christina, when you said that text messages are read within 5 seconds, typically, that's important. Right. They want to get closer to that. It's not something that you want to get to 2 hours later or even 2 days later. And then you're relying on recall to talk about that experience that they had in the branch, with a loan officer or whatever it might be. And also, we're seeing that increase in response rate because you're separating yourself from the noise. So, yeah, really good stats here that line up with what we're seeing as well. And so I want to speak to that, what that looks like from a market research perspective, from a customer experience perspective, which is that we're seeing brands start to step into this place where they want to be able to invite feedback by sending out a text message. Okay, they're getting out of the inbox, they're getting higher response rates because they're getting front and center there through the messaging. So that's one thing that we do. That's one thing that we would recommend that this audience here on this call think about is reaching your customers via SMS, and feedback is one of those great ways to do that, getting closer to the moment of truth. Now, that is something that you want to be careful of too, because you need people to opt in. Okay, we've had clients come to us and say, okay, I've got the mobile telephone numbers for our customers. Can we go ahead and push this out? Well, there are rules that differ by country, so you want to look into that. You're going to have people opt in to receive text messages from you. So if this is your first time in, you can't just take those phone numbers and then start texting people. You actually have to give them an opportunity to opt in, and there are ways to do that as well. Okay, so we like that as a methodology for reaching people close to an experience. Then over on the right-hand side, this one can work as well, but the results are not quite as good because you're relying on the user to initiate the interaction. Okay, so this is an SMS autoresponder, and the way this works is that you would have some sort of call to action. Now, you could picture it this way. If I get a package from Amazon, I could open up that package and I could see that they want my feedback. I could text a keyword to a certain number and I get the link to the survey back. Okay, so that's one easy way to initiate the survey, but it is dependent on the customer to initiate it. Another way is it could be signage in a physical point of presence, such as in a retail location, in a bank branch. But these are ways to reach people, make it easy for them. And then the other key point here is you want to have surveys, you have to have surveys that are optimized for mobile. And we'll get into that in a few slides. What I mean by that is you want to have an experience that will be good for the customer when they're on mobile, when they're filling out that survey. So we'll share a little bit more about that. I'm going to hand it back to Christina for this next slide, though.
Great, thank you. So this slide actually highlights in mobile content, where are we going to begin? It's a known fact that mobile browser traffic is now 2 times bigger than app traffic. That's right, it's growing faster on a global basis. This is according to a study that was released actually near the end of last year, 2015, by Morgan Stanley. It shows that actually the mobile web and browser traffic is winning over the app. Specifically, only 12 of the top 50 mobile properties have more traffic coming from apps than the browser. This includes many of the Google apps such as Search, YouTube, Gmail, to Instagram, Yahoo Mail, and Snapchat, just to name a few. And this discussion actually argues for the focus of mobile browser for many publishers, brands, and marketers. Surprises out there? Okay, and as we move into the next slide, this will continue the conversation.
Yep.
Thanks. Into mobile web and some of the challenges we all will face. And Mark was actually speaking to this earlier on about making sure people really pay attention to the screen and the experience that your end users are actually communicating through at that moment. Clearly, standard websites don't render well on the devices, whether it's an iPhone, Android device, or tablet. There's all types of mobile navigation and design to your development, of course, on the back end. And, taking yourself mobile and moving in that direction could be as simple as the text, the size of your copy, Is it touch friendly for those experiencing this on mobile? And do you have the right controls on the experience? And one that many people might not think of right away, but can become one of the most critical is actually, and what you're actually using on that can make a huge impact on your download speed and how quickly they can move through your experience. This actually started years ago with Google emphasizing the importance of mobile. Mark, what do you remember from back then? I think we were talking about this earlier this week, and when times were changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, Google, they're definitely innovative. They're out there. They're leading the way. They're doing things that we're not expecting, right? Coming out with, some time ago, self-driving vehicles. Same thing, in this space with mobile. Before anyone else, it seems, was talking about it, Google was saying, we need to go mobile. We're going mobile, and you should go mobile. And they've been talking about that for some time, right?
Right. Yeah, that's correct. So, to those on the call, does anyone think back and know what was very important that took place in April of last year? That's April 2015. Well, no, it wasn't normal tax day here in the U.S. A lot of us might actually think of that. That's when things might be due and that deadline is lingering on your calendar. But specifically, on April 20th, 2015, Google began prioritizing the websites that were mobile optimized. That's right. So what this means actually was the search results and prioritization now had a significant weight on the way they were presented via mobile. So this clearly pushed a lot of websites to change in a timely manner. And aside from improved search on something like Google, which is very important to the business, your brand identity, lead generation, a variety of things can be impacted by this. And assuming your website was coded already with a great content management system there, it might have been a simple change for you to maybe just update some of your templates on your page. However, some companies took this to the next level and decided it might actually be time for a brand new website overall and decided to go responsive or adaptive from there to be mobile friendly. The final area here of improving your mobile web results is actually in the directory listings. Wanted to talk through that. Aside from making sure that, of course, your information is current, correct, the focus should actually think of the information and content for those looking at this from a mobile device. So this is a great screenshot here. Specifically, it should not be only mobile friendly and complete, with all of your contact information there, but have the location details there so they could navigate actually to your store or location. Click to call. So you see the call button there as the cursor is moving over. Right there you see the telephone. And with that, you would have your phone number in there, and by that one single click, they are able to actually call upon your business, reach you. And you want that in today's real-time environment because many customers are always on the move. They're in a mobile scenario day to day, and that way they can take action in real time to contact you and likely results in a sale or some sort of movement forward for your business. And with that, I think it's a great time to pass it back to Mark. I think we're going to go into mobile surveys as our next topic.
Yep. Before we go there, I do want to. I'm glad you pointed out the different gestures that take place on a mobile device. One of those that I remember some time ago was important, which is the phone number on the website. Right? If you're on a computer, you're typically not making a call from the computer, so it would be okay to not have that do anything. But you could have your phone number up there on the website. But certainly, when your phone number is on the website and they're on a mobile device, you want them to be able to select that, and automatically they're making that phone call. Right? So
right, and today's consumers are so mobile; they're always on the move, right? They could be calling while they're in transit, on public transit, or driving. So those sorts of things at the moment, right then and there, are so important to make it helpful.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad we're finally to this place where we're recognizing the devices. Do you remember the days? I'm sure you do. When it used to be, this is the URL if you're going to us from this device, and if you're going to us from this device, you need a different URL. Go to the M dot, right?
That's correct. Right. Definitely remember.
Yeah, it's good that we've moved in this direction where there is one web. So let's talk about this in the context of mobile market research and understanding your customers. When we think about mobile optimized surveys, and it's kind of sad there's still a lot of companies who are not doing this. They're not thinking about the mobile experience yet, or they're doing it the wrong way. As Christina said, there are different ways to handle that. We're not simply taking a desktop screen and shrinking it down to put it on a mobile device. Okay, And you can see a good example of that here on the screen. In this example, on the left-hand side, you have this same survey is here on the left and on the right. On the left-hand side, this rating scale is displayed left to right in radio buttons because there is enough real estate there. When someone opens that same survey on a mobile phone, they get drop downs. Okay, it wouldn't be right to try to fit all those radio buttons in left to right. Their thumb would probably hit the wrong one. And so this is really important. Now, why does this matter for connecting with your customers? I will tell you that across 2 to 3 million surveys that are done here at QuestionPro every week, we see just under 50%, somewhere between 45 and 50% of survey responses come from mobile devices. So if you're not optimized for a mobile environment, you're going to miss out on survey response. You're going to be hearing from only those highly passionate people. Those who have had a really good experience or a really bad experience will go through a difficult feedback experience to give you feedback. Okay, so we want to make it easy for more people to speak with you, and in doing so, you're going to have richer data from which you can make good business decisions. Now, the great thing about mobile is that you can get closer to the moment of truth. We've talked about that. The idea there is they leave an establishment, they get a survey, and it's perfectly formatted for the mobile. So you're going to reap some great rewards there by getting rich data. You're not relying on recall to be able to hear from the consumer. So let's go to the next slide here, and I'll turn it back over to Christina.
Thank you. And that was a great example to talk through in terms of how the heavy weight is on real time, as we were covering earlier, having all the right information, and then it, of course, can turn into the response. But taking this to the next level, a lot of us actually out there always, there's quite a debate, at least always in the US, you hear a lot of strong preference for iOS. That's for the iPhones out there. That was one of the very first smartphone that came out. It's seen as a legacy. It's seen as the main one, and many model after that. However, this slide is actually a simple and strong data point for us to review. What it's basically showing is that actually, while it might make sense for mobile app guidelines and stuff, from a development standpoint, many of us always begin with iOS, right? There's one phone, one OS, it's closed, fewer devices to test on. However, this chart actually shows the weight of Android on a global basis and proves that it must be prioritized. So you can't just list this on your list and consider it next step or a maybe. It's definitely a must, and I thought this was a great visual to demonstrate that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Christina. Apple has done such a great job. They are I believe, one of the best marketing engines in the world, and they've done a great job of talking about both their devices and the apps, right? And that's a big part of the benefit of coming to iOS. You hear so much about that. That's how I think that this gets lost. We see that kind of gap that the light bulb goes on when we talk about this, that Android is, as far as a worldwide view, and Android is so much more prevalent. So I'm glad you're sharing this.
Thank you. Okay, I think with that, the next slide actually dives right into the mobile app section here, and specifically the statements on the slide we're going to discuss are, and that is app downloads and ratings plus the ease and uninstalls drives an increased importance in mobile user experience. So how do you stay relevant and stay on the device? How do you stay part of that customer's daily life? We need to talk about that. So first of all, starting on the left, the consumer behavior with mobile apps is changing now. With the amount of time and attention in mobile still being very high, it increases the prioritization of what matters or not. There are now millions of mobile apps out there, especially, millions to millions in both iOS, Android, and other operating systems. The user experience matters even more. It's the first thing a user is going to judge this on, right? From the screenshot experiences they might see in print collateral or on a signage in the store to the first screens they see when they go to the App Store to download your app. So think about that. It isn't just from your app when they're in the app, but it's throughout the experience of enrollment as well as while they're actually in there. And again, in the United States, many think of Apple first. Well, although it was definitely the leader, their simplicity has led to being that poster child or basic example that many use to drive their decision in that direction. But there are clearly a diversity of devices out there. And so the user experience is very slightly, but also the standards for a very clean, clear, and simple experience is even more of an issue. If you have a different type of device that, while many might assume you always have like 32 gigabytes of memory on your device, there are now some that have only 16 or 8. So that makes this actually a really, really important issue that you need to consider. So along with the evolution of all the app development and user experience you need to pay attention to, it's also an issue of how much the apps actually require on the device in order to have a good performance and stay there as part of the user's experience in that mobile device as part of their everyday life, right? And so what happened? You might second image in your actually a great demonstration. The mobile operating system, that's iOS and Android, they took this into their own hands by making it very easy for any consumer out there to now uninstall the app. That's right, we might know some common ones out there, but this screen is actually showing the experience that recommends to you which apps you are not using very often and the amount of storage space required. So clearly this issue is becoming more common. More and more users are running into this challenge, and those who actually make the operating systems for mobile want to make it a great experience. So what is it? It's increasing the importance for mobile user experience, and whatever type of device or screen, as you see there on the right, it takes this from the moment they learn about your app, they're experiencing it, into the main screens as a user, from sign up to your general entry screen, navigation through there. What makes that consumer like, love, or dislike your app? And what makes them come back? That's really what you should be thinking of, is loyalty and repeat use. This actually links into the actions of app ratings and how much it can really impact the success or failure of your app going forward. Investing in the app feedback can actually really help you from the date of your install, when they're first engaging with this, to ongoing check-ins and engagement with your customers, where you can actually now collect the insight, information, engage with them, help them understand how to improve that experience before they take it out to public places like the app stores. And I think Mark wanted to make a couple of comments about that and some of the things you had noticed as well.
Yeah, we see this. There's, like you said, it's becoming highly competitive. There's so many apps out there. There's limited space on the device. And so app makers, designers, engineers, they're trying to figure out, how can we create a great experience? How can we keep people coming back? How can we make our app sticky? How can we increase the amount of time that they're in the app and the amount of times that they're using the app across time? And there's a variety of data points that they can use. They have some great quant data just based on the usage, so they can see what path. Be able to get to the why. You don't want the why to always be rating, right? Because that can drive away people. So we want to be intelligent about intercepting back from the users before they uninstall, or even worse, before they tell a lot of other people why it's a terrible app, why they had a bad experience. And some of those times it can, okay. So what we're doing in that space is we're making it easy for people to get feedback from the app into a browser. In fact, I have a real example of that. We have an existing client. They're a mobile gaming app. They're still outside of the app, and they know that they're losing much longer that people stay in the app doing the gaming and such. They're, what we've done and what these guys are now migrating to is this in-app feedback. We've developed a mobile SDK that allows their developer trigger the why, so the qual here to a degree, because you also want to give them an open end. You're getting the why behind the what, behind all the data that you have. The other thing that you can do is then follow up with dissatisfied customers right away before they go out and rate you on the App Store. So it's a good way to intercept, resolve the issues, not just at a bigger perspective with your app users. And you can also route uh, a connection, you can sync that data, everything passes back through. So these are some of the best practices that we're sharing with customers, and we're seeing customers use turn to talk with us about wearable.
So as Mark was actually starting off with some of those examples, you know, people, okay, consumers today are actually to share more and more through mobile, whether it's responding to the survey, opening an email, responding to SMS. But how did this begin, and where is this evolving now? You know, there was minimal personalization. So people would all see that exact same message. You wouldn't quite say dear customer, but it really felt like that, right? It's very clear in experience for another side of
Okay. Before I talked about getting, we've all heard about the why, getting the what behind the why. These this quant information about what's going on these devices, be it Android or iOS, you can get access to it. So I'll explain. The setup here would be that you have consumers who have agreed to take part in your study. They would download the application, and that application would have access to a variety of things on the device as needed for the study, and we would be able to gather that over a set amount of time. So let's say it's a 3-week study, a tourism company who wanted to be able to understand specifically their customers as they're out vacationing, okay? Be able to, that data that would help them develop strategy, you can do on these devices. But let's go ahead and summarize. I'm seeing the questions rolling really fast now, Christina. If you want to go ahead and summarize, and then we'll begin fielding some questions.
So what we wanted to leave you with today to kind of wrap is what is your tips is helpful for today in terms of going mobile with your business. Messaging, understand how you outreach and communicate with them. Mobile surveys. Is your content mobile friendly, so the mobile content, and taking this into different forms, whether it's the mobile web or you're developing a mobile app. And last but definitely not least, is very important across all of these, is mobile data. So what are you capturing? How are you analyzing it? And how are you using those metrics and measurements?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go through some of these questions. I think we have time for a few of these here. I'm going to give this first one to you, Christina. This is specifically that slide that you showed on Android versus iOS that was worldwide, that showed that big disparity. Audience, I'd like to understand, what does that look like inside the U.S.?
Sure. So I don't have a specific number to quote, but from my recent memory, in the United States, our market is almost 50-50. Has a little bit more, so maybe it's 51-49, it's something like that. But what we're starting to notice is year by year that's changing. But if the global trend continues, what people are thinking it will, and Mary Meeker actually spoke to this, if you want another reference point, the trend is leaning more towards Android as we go forward. But you never know. Things change quickly in this space. But that's the most recent update.
Okay. So it's we're looking at about 50-50 here in the United States, correct?
That's correct. And depending on your consumer base and what you're actually trying to target with your product or service, sometimes with that in mind, you might also choose to prioritize iOS or Android as a result, one before the other, right? If you're going after something that's high-end and for the more affluent consumer, that clearly tends to point towards iOS, for example.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. We have another question here. Does Question Pro have the capability to have in-app surveys? And absolutely, that's what we were talking about on the previous slide with the SDK. So we'll expose that SDK. Your developers can use that inside your app, and then based on a variety of triggers, you can get that survey inside of the app. It could be that you want to survey people a certain amount of time after the download of that app. It could be that you say after a certain number of times that the app has been opened on that device, then you want to trigger this survey. But all of that happens. It can happen there automatically. So, yeah, good question there. I've got one for you, Christina. I'm going to go ahead and read this. Probably read this entire question here. Okay. So this attendee was surprised with the mobile versus web traffic graph. Okay, your graph showed unique visitors. What about in terms of engagement and return visitors? Is web or mobile more effective for these measurements?
I think it really depends on your business. So if you're measuring return visits,
Hi, Christina. I'm having a hard time. I can't hear you right now. It could be that the audio is going out.
Interesting. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly clear again. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So the question was specifically about using web versus mobile and the response rate or keeping them engaged. Is that really what they're looking for?
Yeah, it's about yeah, exactly. What about engagement, return visitors? Is web or mobile more effective for that type of measurement?
I would actually lean towards mobile personally, because mobile, you're able to be even a more personalized experience. You could do
Mm-hmm.
things with tools such as their location to however they've identified in there, whether it's their name or social profile. And you tend to get even more engagement, and you could drive more specific to the consumer, which is where the trends really show we need to go with media and advertising as well, rather than something where you're grouping them in more of a broad category, which I think is how web would tend to be. With all respect, though, there are some great cookies and tracking and all sorts of things present on web. So some of it would all be down specific to your business, and be glad to continue that conversation as a follow-up.
Yep. Okay. Wonderful. I'll go ahead and take the next one, which is, I mean, this is a tough one, but how would you know if a text message with a link to a survey is going to be received by a smartphone or a regular cell phone? I mean, that's a great question, and ultimately, you don't know, not unless you've gathered that data. When someone clicks through a link, there is a device string. So I'm getting a little bit technical here. There's a device string that we can tell on our side to be able to tell which kind of device opened it up. And here at Question Pro, we actually report back on those statistics. So you can see, was this opened up on a desktop, on a tablet, or on a mobile phone? Okay, and even those lines, Christina, you and I could talk about that, how the lines between those devices are becoming blurred, right? Phablets and such.
Yes. Yeah.
But then within those, we can give you additional information, much along the lines that you might see with your market, your ad spending and such, and telling which devices have come to your ads. We will show you the operating system, so you can certainly see, is it Android, is it iOS, is this a Windows 8 device? But then, yeah, I mean, ultimately on the front end, you don't know. It's important, though, that the survey be optimized regardless of the device. So thank you for that question. So, here's a wide open one, and probably one that a question that a lot of people are wondering, but it leaves it wide open. I'm going to give this one to you, Christina. How do you know if your business should go mobile?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I would say, and especially I've seen such a variety over the years, both with work and I think some of the students in my classes and all of their different scenarios and experiences they're trying to align with their work, their companies, whether it's a startup or an established business. I think you need to understand what is the primary use case, and where will that take your company? Will it take it forward, or is that instead going to be just like another IT project? And I would say go mobile and definitely make the investment if you feel that you will be ready to follow the very high-level guidelines we provided today, from everything from your content to staying relevant, personalizing it, reaching out to them for feedback, messaging to engage with them, because otherwise it will probably get lost out of all the many things, the real estate on their device. So I'd encourage you to actually do some survey or insights that you might be able to obtain in advance to get a stronger feel for your audience, whether it's your existing customers or if you're going out after a new customer base, doing more broader field research.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, good. I'm going to take one more question here, which is, what is your response rate for respondents that you've asked to download the app? So I'm going to explain a little bit here. There are a couple ways to approach this. When survey respondents are coming into a study to download the app, a lot of times they're being incentivized to do that. Okay, so they're part of a community. They understand what the commitment in the study is. They're getting some sort of incentive for taking part in that study. So that is, we see, almost close to 100% response rate there, because once they've committed to that and the incentive is in place, people are doing that. It's much higher than what you would get just out in the wild asking people to give you feedback for a certain experience or certain question. But response rates can vary greatly. But what I will tell you is that having a mobile strategy in place and taking into account mobile is going to help you connect. Going back to that slide early on where we saw that gap from that Mary Meeker report that Christina shared with us, there's a big gap from where the eyeballs are to where, where people are spending their time compared to where brands are spending today. So your opportunity here is to take advantage of that gap, to meet consumers where they are, to get rich data, to understand them better, and ultimately serve them better. And when you do that, your business will thrive. So, Christina, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to go through this. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a great discussion. Enjoyed the call.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that insight. I'm so glad that we had all of your experience and your knowledge that you shared here today. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And just as a follow-up, we'll be sending out a link to the recorded webinar. We'll also be sending out a link to a blog post, and I believe a link to the slides that you'll be able to have access to as well. So thanks for joining us. Reach out to either Christina Trampota or to me. You see our email addresses up here on the screen. We'd love to connect with you. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.